Alrighty everybody, hello and welcome to round 3 of the 2023.1 season. We are back in the the Porsche Cup for the simCup series, and we're visiting a really interesting track, Donington Park, out in England. Rain and the weather can be a little bit all over the place from what I understand. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. I think this is quite an exciting race. Gas said he might be joining me in the booth tonight, so I've got him up. Hopefully once he gets back we'll have some nice I'll have a bit of banter with him. But I am here to kind of just get everything off and started. So, just so that we can get some insight into what is happening with this race, let's go and look at the layout tonight. As I've already mentioned, we are at Donington Park. This is the international layout, so the one with the Melbourne hairpin. Really nice and flowy track. You have to be there's quite a bit of commitment required, and I am sure with these absolute beasts, it's not the easiest task getting them around the track consistently without fear of failure there. In terms of the weather, this is why I'm looking at the weather forecast. Things might be a little bit tumultuous. We're racing from 2 to 3 p.m. The rain level is at 20%, the cloud level is at 40 with a low randomness again. And what I remember, or from what I've seen, is it can absolutely shower down, but the low randomness should make for some interesting slow changing weather. So typical British weather, I would say. Right, so maybe let's start getting back to the main things. I think while we're waiting, I'm going to quickly punt and say, if you're keen on racing with us before we get underway, go head on over to www.simracesa.co.za. The website just flashed off the screen there. Go find the Discord details, hop on there. It's always fun getting to see everybody around. It's quite an active Discord at times, so not necessarily always the case, but yeah. Right, it does look... so this is still free practice. We've got about 30 seconds left. Just to quickly have a look here. Sean Strydom currently fastest out there with a 1:29.2. All of the drivers have been hammering around the track as much as they can to try and set a decent lap there. Oh, why am I worried that my heads-up display settings is wrong? I'll have to double check that in just a moment. But yeah, so this is about the timetables we've seen now for free practice. I'm heading back to the track map. Lots of traffic out there. If we just look at the timing tower, there's 23 on screen. By my count, I have a total of 31 drivers registered on my little timing app. So really looking forward to seeing what everybody can throw at this. Of course, we do have to kind of wait to see what weather is in store for us once this first free practice session ends. Yeah, it doesn't look like my HUD layout is too bad, so not gonna worry too much about that right now. I can go back to my broadcasting HUD now, so got the camera or the autopilot director thing on, so we might be jumping a little bit between drivers. I'll switch to using the proper tooling once the qualifying session starts. Terence Ferreira and one of the LNR cars. If I remember correctly, this is one of the liveries I was praising last time around. And right, everybody bumps to grid, so let me quickly click drive and get back in it. Right. This is now where the magic needs to happen. switch to our... our cameras. So drivers are out on track. Big field up and going. Track temperature currently 15 degrees ambient, and the track itself is 20 degrees, so it's a nice and cool day. If I do remember correctly, this isn't the ideal state for tires in ACC, so drivers might be experiencing a little bit of graining. Yes, graining is the one where the tire goes too is too cold and you're actually tearing the surface off. Let's quickly see what's going on YouTube. P21 people on the live stream. Hello everybody. Excited to have everybody here. Really looking forward to seeing what tonight's gonna have in store for us. Right, I'm just hopping up ahead on this from Wake. Doesn't look like he just started a lap 5 minutes. Yeah, he hasn't started. 15 minutes of qualifying, it's not a lot of time to go on. Drivers have to be very careful what they're doing. Focus the fast driver, so let's see. Click on sale. Also currently on what looks to be an outlap. On Strijdom, also one of the LNR drivers. I know that he was worried about load shedding, and it's one of the very few nights where it seems we have a load shedding free race tonight. So I'm excited to see what the drivers can do without that little niggle of a worry in the back of their minds that things might go south. Right, Sean is on a hot lap right now. We'll have to wait and see where the times fall as they go. I will see some drivers starting to complete their lap times very soon. I didn't manage to catch whoever was at the front of the train, unfortunately. Another car. That looks like one of the Gunston drivers. I can't remember. Running very wide there. But making sure to stay out of the way. So Ryan Barrington-Smith pops up into provisional pole with a 129.3. Gregory Hofart is in a P2, but he gets shifted down by Charles Wilkin, who takes provisional pole. I'll finish the lap with Sean Strijdom just now, and then we'll see if we can go find someone else for a little bit of a hot lap. Sean Bingham in YouTube chat. Hello Sean, always great to have people here. Yes, I think this is going to be a great track and car combo. Right, Sean Strijdom pops into P6. 1.2 seconds adrift of Charles Wilkin there. Let's see, let's go do some hunting. Hardis. I'm gonna have to jump down. I want to try and catch someone who's still trying to complete their lap. So Dennis Knutse, he might only be starting a hot lap right now. Actually can't remember where Dennis previously placed. Dennis seems to be pushing it as hard as he can. Really pushing track limits there. As he cuts down the curves there. Just ever so slightly. Ooh, that's not going to be ideal. That's another driver getting slightly in the way. Can Dennis make it through? Does he not lose too much time? Oh, it is tough. 31 tracks on a pretty small track. I wouldn't say Donington is one of the biggest or longest tracks out there. Maybe stock standard length. I don't know what stock standard length would entail, but it is definitely a very narrow track, as most of the British tracks tends to be. Very tentative on the throttle there around the hairpin. Dennis aiming to finish with a good lap. Let's see how things went. Bumps up into P20. Maybe a little bit more work needed there. Right, let's see if we can go hunt for someone. Riding on board now with Donovan Deneuwen. Start hunting for people improving their laps significantly very soon. See more people joining there. Ruan Heineke, Tyler Humphreys, great to have you here. Hopefully it's going to be an exciting race for us tonight. I've thoroughly enjoyed the Porsche Cup car races every single time I've commentated on them. I am a little sad that I'm not racing them, but honestly, I think I would have been shattered if I had to take on this car for a whole season. Right, Donovan crosses the finish line and doesn't improve. Maybe he's only starting hard lap now. Right, I'm gonna hop over to Westhuizen. And he's just gonna cross the finish line. That bumps him up into P14. Just trying to find someone. Sean Veje. That's very, very wide out of that hairpin. He's currently 7 seconds up on his delta, which, looking at his time, does not make the corner. Right, I hear the little boop there. Mr. Gascoigne, how are you? Still muted. Let's hope he can get his sound fixed soon. Right, so gonna go hunt a little more. Let's go look up top. Hannes van Wyk currently 2 tenths up on his delta. He has just started a lap. 8 tenths to get him close to Charles Wilkins, so quite a bit in it. 4 tenths. And Hervé Marais jumps in right ahead of him. Hannes can just keep it clean, keep it up. I'm a little worried about the car up ahead. But that is, as we've always said, it's driver's responsibility to make sure that they get out in a good position. If the car ahead is on a hot lap, there is not much you can do other than bide your time and maybe try to open up a gap so that you can try for another lap. 6.5 minutes left on qualifying, so just 1 minute under half of the time left. Not a lot of time. 15 minutes really isn't a lot, but what can we do? We have load shedding in this country that we have to work around. Hello, Mr. Gascoigne. I see you're still muted.
Good evening, Sass. Looks like I might have made it just about in time again to the end of qualifying. Run me through what's happened so far.
Thus far, well, the timing tower should say it all. Charles Wilkins currently on provisional pole with a 120. And I see Hannes jump to pits. Let me just go find someone else to watch while I speak. Charles Wilkins currently on provisional pole with a 128.5. He's been consistently quick in this series, Sean Stradom following close by with he's just 2 tenths adrift, and in P3 Ryan Barrington Smith with 4 tenths behind him, Arvia 8 tenths behind him, and Hannes van Wyk locking out the top 5, also 8.5 tenths behind him. So the field is a little more spread than I think I'm used to, but I'm also used to seeing Charles Wilkins and Sean Stradom right there at the top.
100%. And as you mentioned that, I see Sean Stradom's popped into provisional pole, less than 2 tenths ahead of Charles. But yeah, I think that's one of the challenges of Donington circuit, is it can be one where you really need to maximize, and that can happen right through your whole qualifying, I guess.
Yes. Just jumping back to P22, Mr. James Leach. He is about a third into his lap. He is a good 7 tenths up on his delta. That might bump him up 3, maybe 4 positions, depending on how things go.
Certainly looks fairly close in the midfield, so yeah, that could see him jump up a handful of positions, maybe even into the top 20 if others don't already jump up as well.
I'm also certain that these drivers are keeping an eye on that weather widget with bated breath. I've seen some horrendously wet sessions on the practice server. Ooh, James arriving in the back of someone there. That might cost him a bit of time. Oh no, the person in front spins out. As can happen if you're not very careful on throttle application in this car.
Yes, and this track doesn't, let's say the optimal line doesn't really afford you much to play with in terms of width. So unfortunately, yeah, anybody getting even slightly in the way is going to cost you some time up ahead.
James Leach jumping up to P17. That was a whole second quicker than his previous lap. I'm going to jump up ahead. Oh no. Johan van der Merwe is just finishing his lap. That bumps him up into P3. Almost thought that was the exact same time as Ryan Barrington-Smith, but I see that's a good 400ths of a second quicker. Ooh, very, very out of shape there at the at the first corner, almost losing the car. Lots of red on my timing screen, not really seeing anybody improving. I am gonna maybe just jump to Christy Simon. That was a little bit hesitant. Interesting. I was under the impression that Christy won't be able to make the race. I'm assuming he wasn't planning on racing because of load shedding.
Yeah, small blessing and a great reprieve to have load shedding off for tonight. So yeah, that would be unexpected. I saw at least one name that jumped back in after taking themselves out.
That is Mr. Sean Strydom. He was under the impression that he wasn't going to be able to come and contend for the top spot in this series.
Indeed, and considering the top spot, he's also pushed himself up to now to over 3/10 ahead of Charles Wilkins. So he's definitely set the gauntlet there for the provisional pole time at the moment, coming up into the last 2 minutes.
I'm actually quite curious. I'm just jumping to Adrie Marais in 6th place. I'm actually quite curious if there's a little bit of track evolution in here. And I actually should go and find a little bit of info. So watching this Schick Racing team, we've got so many DMs that I'm gonna have to go through. There was a little bit of insight given by the team for the Schick Racing team. They're a relatively new bunch, but they've been proving themselves to be quite quick. And it sounds like they have a little bit of an appetite to start up their own academy program as well. So next season, if anybody interested, like, you might want to keep an eye on these gents in the Schick Racing cars. Maybe reach out to them, see if you can grab a hold of the opportunity and see what you can learn from them. I'm hopping back to Hannes van Wyk in P7. He's been struggling to keep up. Initially, he was in a solid P5 there, but doesn't look like he's really improving this lap. And I don't think there's going to be enough time for him to start another. Ooh, it's going to be... No, I don't think there's enough time. It's not even going to be tight. It's going to be a short 10 seconds. Right on the bubble there, though. So, like, sometimes seeing him a 10th up and then just goes back to a neutral time. Ooh, that's an invalid lap. Pushing a little too hard there. Just hopping back to P19, Mr. Martin Groenewald, one of the new rookies here. He's also been working hard and steadily improving. He is currently a 2nd up on his Delta. And as he crosses the finish line, that bumps him up into P14. So that will be he'll have a pretty big smile on his face there. And then just jumping to Johan van der Merwe in P3, currently 3/10 up on his Delta, halfway through the lap. So loads of time that he can still gain if he's left some time on the table. 4 tenths he has to make up to Charles Wilkin though. It might be a little bit of a tall order, but let's see.
There's a good gap separating P1 to 2 and 3 at the moment, but very close amongst the rest of it, down another 3-4 positions. So I'd say even a tenth or two can find you a few spots up there, but there's going to be quite an ask to take away first or second at the moment, front row.
I'm not sure if that was a very tidy line. Look tidy. Jumps him up into P3 just ahead of Ryan Barrington-Smith, who also improved on that last lap. So Johan managing to close off that gap there right at the end.
Yeah, we saw them each jump about 2 tenths and 4 tenths respectively. So that also plays into what you mentioned about the track evolution.
Yes.
I think especially at a cooler temperature, the rubber will keep peeling off and just lay down more to use. And I think that that newly formed second row of the grid there showed that as well towards the end.
Definitely. Right, so while we get ready for the grid, I'm going to quickly go to an ad break. We'll be right back, everybody. And just look at that, it is raining. We're back, and it's looking like it's going to be a nice and wet race right now. Medium rain at the moment. Still a minute left for the drivers to prepare. I am kind of glad that we've managed to squeeze in an extra minute for race preparation. That was a little bit tough to get everything sorted. But we had to work with what we had. John Strydom managing a really good pole there for him to come and lock out the grid. He's got the inside line, and I'm curious in this wet track, on a wet track like this, what the situation will be. How careful do you need to be? Currently it's listed as very wet. I'm seeing some concerning puddles all around. And I only imagine that the drivers will need to be very, very careful here. Tentative, hoping for a very nice and clean start as well.
Certainly, I was actually just casting my eye down the tower as well towards the bottom half, trying to recognize the names that had some pace as well in the GT3 series at Zolder, which was, of course, in the wet last round. And just thinking that we might see quite a few... well, it'll be a bit 50-50 between some sad faces seeing the wet come down so hard at the start, but definitely some that would have lit up their smiles knowing what they were capable of previously in GT3 cars and could do something similar moving through the field here in the simCup.
Oh, there's so much to race here, and I think while this is GT3 machinery, I do know that the setup options are a little more limited. Ooh, I was almost worried that Johan van der Merwe was going to spin on the parade lap just now. But like while this is GT3 machinery, your setup options are a lot more limited in terms of aero, and then your suspension also doesn't have the same amount of depth that you can tweak and toggle and change. So drivers drivers like Sean Strydom and Charles Wilkin seems to have unlocked some little bit of magic there. I'm really curious what they've managed. I know that on the Grumpy Monkey side we've struggled a little bit there to figure everything out, but I still feel this is a super duper fun car to drive, and you just have to be so patient in the throttle.
Perhaps with the more limited options in the setup as well, that just enforces that disciplined driving that is required, as you say, being much more careful on the throttle than you would be. Of course, goes naturally hand in hand with wet conditions, but perhaps even more so with the simCup. I understand the brakes are quite twitchy as well in a sense, so that's obviously something it's going to reward the driver who really plays a disciplined race today as well.
From what I remember, the 1 or 2 races that I've driven in this car, what I experienced was this like wave or like shift in grip. Every second or every third lap was a low grip lap, and then it would switch back to the next 3 laps being nice and high grip. Not 100% sure what exactly was causing that. I'm not smart enough to understand the dynamics of tires and everything there, but I remember it being very interesting. You felt really confident one lap, and then all of a sudden the next lap you've overheated your tires a little bit, and you need to be careful to not be overconfident in that one, because that's where you can spin. And as we're talking, they're lining up side by side in the rain, wipers going. I can see in 30 minutes time the rain's going to go to light, so I'm wondering, will we see ever so slight light rain by the end of this race?
Or perhaps even if that quietens down into stop raining. I know at Zolder it made a massive difference between being able to actually go onto a dry set of tires towards the end. So we'll see if that plays out.
Ooh, Knutse already with the drive-through penalty for being out of position. Charles Wilkin getting not the best start there, gets well, not shunted, little bit of a shoulder tap there, pushing him off the road. This timing tower is going to take an age to update while we cross that first line in the sector.
Well, things were really tight going through that first corner. Of course, in the wet, understeer is going to be natural there. I think aside from poor Charles finding his way off track there, most of the drivers did make it through unscathed, but it would have been very tricky going through that first corner, but the first few especially going down the hill into turn 4 as well.
Yes. Oh, it's interesting to see Sean Strybon and Johan already starting to pull a little bit of a gap on Ryan Barrington-Smith there. I'm just gonna hop back to Dennis Knutse, who's currently running in P5. He's gonna have a drive-through penalty that he has to serve. It is one of those unfortunate things. If you find yourself out of position at race start, and you're not very careful, you can end up losing quite a bit of time due to this drive-through penalty. Dennis on the outside is Hannes, really struggling to get the power down. Dennis deciding to run for another lap. I'm sure Hannes would have been a little bit in his way there on pit entry.
I'd seen 2 or 3 cars get out of shape on that final corner, so that's where we need to see them be as disciplined as possible in order to not take away all the hard work that they do earning up positions. I believe that one was a Byron Thompson and a green car that always goes missing on me. Charles Wilkin, in fact. So getting down the power, especially through that last hairpin, is going to be a very tricky ask for a lot of these drivers in this wet condition.
Oh, it is one of those really fun types of conditions that you have to watch out for.
So there's already about a second gap between P1, 2 and 3 respectively, and then a good 3 seconds along to P4 in Hervé Marais. So that's showing that the front runners want to get away with it, but can change in a split second in these conditions.
Now I am quite curious what the tire strategy will be. We do have a pit window in this race, and I'm actually trying to rack my brain and figure out if this pit window does show. Now Dennis Knutse does dive into the pits to go serve his drive-through penalty.
I think while there is a lot of traffic, that might be a good idea to get it out of the way early, especially if he felt he was getting held up by any cars ahead. or at risk of being overtaken by any cars behind. So good idea to get that out of the way, but he's still going to come out into a bit of traffic, so I'm not sure that it'll pay off to start.
I don't really think there was a way for him to win in that scenario. It is just one of those unfortunate things where if you're caught out by the start procedure there, it can end up costing you a little bit.
And I expect it should be the same, so a full drive-through penalty, 3 laps to serve.
Yes, it is still the same. You need to be very, very cognizant of that fact. I have seen cases where drivers ignore that penalty thinking, no, it will be fine, and then end up being disqualified because they didn't serve it on time.
Yes, so you would have only had another 1 lap leeway there, so it chose to obviously take it a bit early, but at least he's got some clean air behind. He has plenty of time to, of course, work his way through the field based on pace from his qualifying lap.
I'm just bumping down to P13. Hardus Boyse in a heavy battle there with Flip van Zyl and Martin Groenewald. There's still a little bit of a train here in the midfield. Martin getting slightly out of shape there. It's this is a car that kind of likes to be driven slightly sideways. You just have to be very careful that you don't go too far.
And in fact, Hardus was one of the drivers' names who immediately popped to mind, as well as Jeremy de Villiers, who drove exceptionally well in the wet weather in the GT3 series. So I would expect, they've already, looks like they've each got at least 4 positions up from their starting positions. So that's already something to show for it, and I only expect them to move more forward.
Maybe a little bit of a weird thought here. I do know in the GT3 cars we have access to nice things like good ABS and a good option for traction control. I found that the people that kind of tend to do well in the wet is people who know how to use their machinery. So I'm wondering if their wet driving ability, how much it is due to them knowing their machinery and tweaking settings so that they can get the most out of it, or just driving like absolute beasts. Martin Groenewald looking very, very racy there with Hardus.
He's gone side by side, a little bit of a touch. Hardus now going back up the inside on him as well after contact.
Little bit of rubbing is racing. I think both drivers still managed to come off of that with very little to complain about. Ooh, up ahead, what's that? Flip van Zyl having a little bit of a moment going off track, so that's going to bring him into the clutches of Hardus now. And I'm seeing green deltas across the board almost. So this track should be slightly, well, it might be drying up a little bit, or at least their tires are getting up to temperature right now.
Certainly. I think I'm using Charles Wilkin as a bit of a yardstick at the moment. Of course, the man is experienced with putting a car sideways on dirt roads. And seeing how he's driving his green Porsche at the moment, trying to chase down Alvia Marais. He's definitely showing that the car has more pace when you put in that slip angle, but in the wet, it's all about how much you are prepared to risk that as well.
That was just the thing that I was wondering about. There's only so much that you can do with these wet tires in terms of temperature. If you're starting to over push them and putting too much heat in them, that's going to eat up a lot of life from the tires. And as this track is drying, I am sort of expecting a pit stop for tires this time around if the track gets dry enough. If it's not going to get dry enough, I'm sure that the drivers will just stick it out in the wets. I know these wets are quite resilient on the GT3 machinery. And this is me. I think that ACC uses the same tire model for this car as well as the GT3 machinery. So the wet tires can take quite a beating because of the colder conditions. The life of a tire like that can be 2, maybe even 3 stints if I remember correctly.
Certainly. I think also coming back to what you were saying about the drive style and the ability of each driver to maximize what they can in the wet weather is going to play into that. Of course, there are resilient tires, but we know that tire temperature and being in that optimum window as well makes a massive difference. So I think easy to push, but just much harder to actually keep it in the optimum window to keep consistent lap times going at high pace.
And I think I must say that it is looking like Charles is ever so slightly faster than Arvia. Arvia's last lap 36.2 and Charles' last lap 36.4, but Arvia makes a mistake and Charles manages to capitalize on that beautifully. He's just going to say thank you very much for that.
Shabe, I think you can say he was definitely pushing as hard as possible to stay ahead of him, but that showed as well in missing that brake zone, trying to take as many extra pieces of time that he can find, but that unfortunately led to the downfall in being forced to let Charles pass.
Yeah, looking at the traffic that Charles is now running into backmarker traffic P32, that is Javan Tarika. It is quite obvious that this is a wet race. Normally, I think in the dry races, we're not seeing that many cars lap this early. And as I say that, the pit window is now open, so drivers have the option to either stop for... No, they need to add at least 1 liter of fuel in order to serve their mandatory pit stop. Tires is free choice, I think. And from what I've seen in the last 2 races, optimal strategy, run the stint deep, splash and dash, come out and finish the race.
Absolutely, especially with that resiliency of the wet weather compound that you mentioned. The longer the drivers can run, the more they can give themselves the chance to clear traffic first time round and approach it second time round to try and put themselves in more of an open gap. I think will play as big a difference as the weather might. Having said that, though, we'll have to keep an eye on the weather, and if it does stop raining towards the end of the race, of course.
I just switched to Hannes van Wyk, who was looking very racy with Arve, and as he drove through the chicane, he just lost the rear. Managed to keep it going straight, though, but that's put him back quite a bit, and it's allowed Mark Henneberry to try and get into the clutches there. Well, get the Hannes into his clutches to capitalize on another position.
And we've also seen a position change up top, although they are fighting back with each other. So Ryan Barrington-Smith managed to get the overtake done on Van der Merwe, but Van der Merwe trying to go back up the inside into turn 1. Looks like he might have just nipped it back. Yes, he has. So that's quite a battle going on there for, I'd say, quite a few laps. Ryan Barrington-Smith looks like he was catching the back of Van der Merwe, and he did indeed. Which is a nice change around because he was one of the drivers I was concerned went a bit missing in the rain in GT3 at Zolder specifically. So it's good to see that he has found his pace in this wet weather as well to be able to battle for a podium spot again.
Yeah, just quickly hopping over into YouTube chat again there. Stiggy Wiggy, not sure who that is, but welcome. Ryan Hill and Robin van der Merwe as well, welcome. Stiggy mentioning the sound of the Porsche is not quite sounding right. I think that's because we're in, and when I switch to the TV cameras, we just hear all of the Porsches whining at high revs. But I'm on board with Ryan Barrington-Smith now. Ooh, he outbrakes himself just a little into the hairpin there. Like I'm riding on board with him now to just listen to the glorious roar of this Porsche machinery.
Much like a Ferrari, which is a personal bias of mine, but Porsche is one for the ages. That engine note you have been hearing for close to the last 100 years in racing. So yeah, definitely one that we have to admire from time to time.
I will go ahead and say the sacrilegious thing. I was initially not a fan. Maybe I'm giving away my age a little bit. I'm also maybe giving away when I became a petrol head. But it took a race or two for this engine sound to grow on me.
I can empathize. So Porsche's always been lower down on my list, but just on pure respect, regardless of what the sound is like, the racing that it's offered in multiple series and multiple different classes, I mean, hats off. It's one of those begrudging things that I have to come to terms with every now and again, that regardless of what it looks like, what it sounds like, it's a race car and it's there to compete.
I will say though, I was listening to the Cadillac Hybrid, what's that, the LMDH, the other day, pulling out of the pits. That was quite the experience, hearing it go from that electronic whine over into the roar that is that engine.
Certainly, yeah. That's another place we need to see Porsche come back again,
yes,
I guess.
Yes, I'm hoping.
Certainly. I mean, they are supplying parts as well to a lot of the teams out there at the moment. And then, of course, operating in LMDH under the Penske name, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm just jumping back to P10. There's a little bit of movement there as I think Martin Groenewald manages to get past Byron Thompson. But that is also bringing Gregory Hofart into contention. Gregory, one of the B team racing drivers with their nice B livery. Oh, it is wet. You have to be very tentative on the throttle going down those S-bends. Gregory just missing out there, not getting the old hairpin quite right.
Trying to figure out, we have seen one driver drop down somewhere in the top 10, because I see each driver has moved up a position from recently, but I think it might have been Flip Van Sale. Was he ahead of Jeremy de Villiers? I think Jeremy de Villiers might have taken his position off him.
That might be the case. This battle between Byron Thompson and Martin Groenewald not over yet. Oh, and as I say that, Byron getting very out of shape, coming out of the chicane. Needs to be very careful to not let Gregory Hofart slip by. Martin not getting the tightest line around the hairpin, so that's going to allow Byron to just stay in touch.
Of course, that will what will also play into your strategy while racing the guy ahead of you will be those back markers. While they'll be doing their best, I'm sure, to get out the way. As you can see, those two are battling for position behind them that they've now passed as well. So that has to be taken into consideration. It's never easy to get past the back marker that is battling. So you want to be fair to each other's battles rather than expect anyone to just move over.
So just jumping back to P18, James Leach and Terence Ferreira. No, sorry, that's Roxanne Bartle. Tiny bit of history between these two drivers, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure if James managed to just get past Roxanne. He seems to be opening up that gap very quickly. So let me jump back 30 seconds and see what happened. No, 30 seconds is not enough. James is already ahead of Roxanne. Roxanne almost running into the rear of James there. Slightly unsettled with the different line of braking there. As we hop back, I'm gonna go back to P5. Arvia Mare, Johannes van Wyk looking very racy with each other there. 40 minutes left on the clock. The weather forecast is still saying light rain, so I'm not hopeful that this track is going to dry out completely. I am fully expecting drivers to be taking just the splash and dash at the end of the race.
Providing quite a bit of entertainment in this rain in comparison.
That was a back marker that was really struggling to get out of the way. Little bit sideways there, but they managed to slide it off track and keep it out of the way of the cars trying to get by.
I think what's going to be very important about Johan van der Merwe and Ryan Barrington-Smith's battle going on is, while they're focusing on each other, there's a rapid Charles Wilkin that's now approaching them. And that could well be... Oh, and as I said, I think I've commentated cursed somebody.
You've commentator cursed Johan there. 2 for the price of 1.
Well... Yeah, it was bound to happen. I'll definitely defend myself in saying he looks like he outbraked himself quite hard into that hairpin. But of course, he won't let it up. That will be the final podium spot, and I'm expecting that battle to continue for a while if he can catch up.
Same here, but you know the key thing about the commentator's curse, it's not about whether the driver actually made an error, it's the fact that we focused attention on the driver.
This is part of the reason why I think for an entire race I'm refusing to cast my screen onto Greg Hofart. I seem to have cursed him every time I've looked at him in the last 2 races I've commentated.
I'm just going to go and hop on board with Charles Wilkin. His last lap of 35.5 and Ryan Barrington-Smith's last lap of 35.8. So I'm not sure how much of that pace, difference was due to Ryan. Oh, and Ryan getting very squirrely there. Got the inside line for the hairpin. Can he keep it clean? Charles looking like he's going for the cutback, and that's going to play into his hands. And I don't discount Johan van der Merwe, because he's also trying to close the gap and goes for a slightly different line, trying to get the better exit compared to Ryan Barrington-Smith, or Berries, I think, as his teammates call it. Now, so Charles Wilkin's best lap time a 34.5, Sean Stradom's best lap time a 34.7. There's 38 minutes left in this race. I can't do the math right now, but I am certain that Sean needs to be very careful not to let Charles Wilkin catch up too much.
He's got a little bit of a time gap to work with, but yes, they'll be watching that with due attention, I would think, especially once he does consider any pit stops coming around, as that's going to make all the difference as well.
Okay, I'm just trying to find a bit more of a battle. My timing screen is just jumping around now. Oh, it's as people are crossing the finish line, they're driving past another car, and that's the gap that's shown. It's not the actual gap ahead or behind. P13, Jeremy de Villiers and Renier Leach. Jeremy, why does it feel like he was in the top 10?
He was in fact up to P8 the last time we were paying attention to him, so he's lost a lot of time.
Look at the front of that car. Look at the front of that. That's looking a little bit second hand. I'm wondering, it might be car 9 accident. Can't view that highlight. I have a slight suspicion that was due to contact. I do remember seeing in the background the back markers spinning at I can't even remember the turn's name, but spinning and not quite getting the car to stop. It's that blind right-hander before the chicane. It might have been that Jeremy was arriving as this car spun and just didn't have anywhere to go. As my highlights log does say that there was an incident with car 9. And 998. Yes, that tracks. That's the two driver. That's the car that I saw spin. Right, I'm gonna be that guy now, hopping to Gregory Hofart, being hunted down by Martin Groenewald and Byron Thompson. I think the squabble between Martin and Byron has allowed Gregory to slip by.
Yes, it does look like he's up 2, maybe even 3 positions, although my chart does still have Jeremy de Villiers at P8, so that would be 2 positions then that he snuck up.
Martin outbraking himself completely into the hairpin there. But he's still side by side and manages to pull away from Byron Thompson, but not this time around, just pushing too hard now. This is where the little bit of extra experience shows. I think this is his first season with Sim Race SA. If I remember correctly, he might have mentioned that he's done a little bit of sim racing on other platforms, but not necessarily had as much time racing with other people and dealing with the pressure that comes with it. Gap between Charles Wilkin and Sean Strydom now 5.3 seconds. I think I remember that being over 6 seconds a little while ago.
It certainly was. So Charles looking to make short work of it now rather than wait until the pit stop strategy.
I will say though, Sean's last lap was quicker than Charles. We'll see now as Sean crosses the finish line. He does a 34.9 and Charles crosses the finish line for a 34.3, a whole 0.6 quicker. He's not taking any nonsense now.
If my live delta is to be believed as well, it looks like both of them are certainly pushing. Sean found himself almost 0.2 up on his PB in the first sector. He's lost it a little bit, but still finds himself within 1/10 of his PB. Charles Wilkin looks like he's improving in various mini sectors. So I'd say both drivers are now trying to bring out their maximum. It's all a fight for P1 at the moment.
And I think that's going to be exciting. 5 seconds. Oh, that might mean in 5 to 10 laps, we're going to be seeing a battle. 15 minutes. I think it's going to be quite the battle to end off this race. Who knows? Maybe the battle isn't even fought. I've seen many a time where the pit stop turns out to be the thing that undoes a driver's race. But I am sure Sean and Charles has been practicing their pit stops to make sure that they nail it this time around. The only concern now being it is wet, so you have to take that into consideration when you park in your pit box.
Indeed, and let's not forget that just a momentary lapse in concentration can lose you a whole chunk of time, which I've just seen with poor Ryan Barrington-Smith. Letting himself down big time coming out of a corner, and he's gifted P3 back to Jan van der Merwe, now being forced to chase down that gap in time all over again.
So Berries and Van, that's the battle that we're watching now.
And Ryan did gap, let's call him Van then. He did gap Van quite a bit leading up to that era. So I'd expect at the moment, at least based on current conditions and their tyre state, that he perhaps does just slightly have the pace on him. But that said, I have seen Johan van der Merwe drive his best driving perhaps while being chased by someone. Different characteristics come out in different drivers.
I think tonight has attested to it. Either chasing or being chased. Johan, while he has made some small mistakes, he's not let it get him down. He has been there to make sure that he can capitalize on whatever is thrown back at.
Certainly, and he's going to need to bring out that full arsenal of weaponry now.
Sean Wilkin is
that gap.
4/10 up on his delta, so he's going to be improving his best lap by 4/10 right now. That's going to be a sub 34-second lap time compared to Sean Strydam's 34.7. That's almost a second quicker than Sean. This battle is coming much more quickly than I'm expecting.
So Shaw might just be driving a bit angry still from unfortunately losing the front off the front row of the grid on the opening corner. So he perhaps is bringing out some of his more rapid driving through the states that he's been through.
I do think he lost a little bit of time there trying to navigate the back marker, but he does so nice and cleanly. That is the type of driving that we want to see. Oh, and that I don't even know if that was a moment. It looked like his rear was sliding, but it looked so elegant, and he just recovered immediately.
So that shows pure experience right there. When the car does go sideways, knowing exactly what to do with it.
Right, sorry, I'm just jumping back to Jeremy de Villiers, who's got Martin Groenewald all over the back of him. I do think Martin had overtaken, Jeremy had overtaken Martin just now. We are also seeing the first pit stops occurring. So Hannes Boyce managing to clear his first mandatory pit stop, as well as Dennis Knutse.
Just quickly checking on both those stoppers. They were pretty rapid in and out of the pits. No damage on the car visibly, at least. So that looks like a planned pit stop, I'd say.
No, I think that's at the 30-minute mark, so that's a 50-50% strat. I'm not 100% sure how long they were stationary, but I think this might now boil down to trying to think about navigating back markers. If traffic isn't going to be a problem and you are a little stuck behind someone, now would be the time to pit. Like, there's no sense wasting time behind someone. I'm currently watching Hervé Maria, who's got Mark Henneberry. For a moment there I thought Mark lost it. Who's got Mark Henneberry trying to close the gap. Mark struggling a little bit there with his car is just drifting around a little bit. Might be a little bit of internet connectivity issues. I hope that it doesn't end up becoming a problem.
Just checking between the top two, it looks like Sean has at least brought his personal best down.
Yeah, almost spinning out of the hairpin there. That's gifting Mark Henneberry P6. Hunting for close battles. It's going to be Martin Groenewald still maintaining clinging onto the rear of Martin of Jeremy de Villiers up ahead.
We've also got René Leach also closing onto the back of them too. So this could be a three-way battle very soon.
Jeremy's last lap 6/10 slower than Martin's. So Jeremy struggling a bit. I suspect that might just have been back marker traffic as well. But it just shows the ebb and flow of this race. Something I did want to say about the yucks. Look at that weather forecast. showing no rain in 30 minutes, but by then the race would have finished. But no, something I've pondered is the effect of a mandatory pit window on races like this, where you have some weird weather that could play a role. Because imagine if the pit window was only 10 minutes, that means that from minute 25 to minute 35 you had the ability to go and pit. Yes, for dry races maybe it's a little bit boring because then everybody does the same thing, but in reality everybody does the same thing, even with the longer pit stop, or the longer pit window. For races where mixed weather is a thing, having that smaller pit window really forces a driver to think carefully about what they're doing. Do they pit early to try and run as long as possible? And Martin Groenewald pulls into the pits. He's going to go and serve his pit stop, he sees that he's slightly faster than Jeremy up ahead, and decided, nope, I'm rather going to see if I can capitalize on a good pit stop.
Indeed, I think it also plays into how much you how much you can avoid any errors or time loss as well. Extending, you would still say, is the best idea. Seeing what the weather has to hold, being closer to any transitional changes. But yes, it still comes down to taking it at the right time.
But that's kind of what I'm getting at. The jeopardy of a smaller pit window means that if you can pit with 25 minutes to go, you are either faced with the decision to take dry tires in suboptimal conditions because it might be drying out very soon but not quite yet, or do a splash and dash and then take a second pit stop when the track does dry out, or just try to run that wet tire until it absolutely dies. I think it just introduces that little bit more jeopardy in changing conditions than for static conditions.
Yes, and this is exactly what we saw in the last round of GT3 at Zolder as well. There was a huge differential of about 5 to 7 seconds depending on where you were positionally, but about 5 to 7 seconds between those that extended and stayed on the wet tire versus those that actually pitted to a dry tire on a track that had become quite dry by the end of the race, and they were catching each other crazy. I was struggling to figure it out at first. That's how crazy the pace difference was. But I was advised after the race that a few drivers dared to stay on a wet tire that was struggling in the dry conditions, especially having already driven 45, 50 minutes.
That's something you need to weigh up. With a splash and dash, you can save so much time. Minimum stationary time for changing tires is 30 seconds. Minimum stationary time for 1 liter of fuel is 3.2 seconds. That's a lot of time to make up if you do end up switching tires.
It all depends. I guess we'll have to see about 10 minutes time, but what is hiding and lurking between that 10 to 30 minute period on how quickly a track might dry up? Based on the way it looks now with how hard this rain is falling, I'd say we are probably stretching our imagination to believe that it might dry up before the end of this race.
I also don't think it's going to dry up. The cloudy conditions means that there isn't really sun and heat to evaporate any of the water, but it is damp, and that does have an impact on tire performance because there isn't as much water to cool down the tire. I'm expecting to be seeing drivers start to hunt for, yes, and as I say that, Charles Wilkin in the background, he's hunting for those wet patches to try and keep his tires cool.
Absolutely. It looks like he did. He has for the last 5 laps been struggling to maintain the pace that he was finding catching Sean Stradom. Haven't seen Sean improve his PB too much, but consistency is key here.
Yeah, he is still quicker than Sean, but I'm sure that Charles arriving in the back of Martin Groenewald here, who's battling with James Leach, is not helping the situation. Martin taking a very, very tight line, wondering, no, he's not letting Charles by, he's just aware of it. Ooh, be careful, but exit. Ooh, that was a close call.
That's about the last place you want to find yourself, coming out of the pits into the middle of a three-way battle like that. Well, blue flags aside, regardless.
Just trying to hunt for some gaps. It looks like this is now back marker traffic interfering with my timing tower. I really need to take some time to go and write better application, because this thing that is bundled with the game is not nice. I'm just quickly hopping back to Jeremy de Villiers. He's got Renier Leach. Yeah, Renier Leach all over the back of him there. There is about 10 minutes left in the pit window. Both Renier and Jeremy hasn't pitted yet. And I think that might... Who's that very, very green car in the background? Is that... Oh, the very, very green car is Renier Leach. Okay, so Jeremy has a bit of a buffer between himself. That might be a back marker that's just clinging onto the back of him right now.
Under the state of that car, I'm sure he couldn't be happier about that. Definitely the largest amount of damage that we have in the field at the moment. A testament to the Porsche bodywork on holding on to that. Well, it would be the trunk technically, but the front bonnet lid. Well, it should have come undone by now.
Isn't the technically correct term called a frunk?
Front. That might just be the right one to use in this situation.
No. Makes me think of a joke on the Silicon Valley TV series, but unfortunately I can't repeat that live on air.
I've seen Ryan Barrington Smith close right up to the back of the
I was just about to say. They have a back marker there. There was a moment they had to hesitate a bit if that back marker was going to rejoin. So Ryan's last lap. Ooh, that was very, very close. Ryan's last lap, 6 or 7 tenths quicker. Oh, I'm lying. It's 8 tenths quicker than Johan van der Merwe. So Johan's gonna be I'm not gonna be too surprised if they're gonna be battling this out until the end of the race. Looking at the situation though, there is about 8 minutes left. Ryan should probably be thinking about pitting, in my opinion. But now I'm wondering how much strategy options I'm giving away on air for teammates listening in. Although it should be obvious to them as well. If you're quicker and they're judging by the amount of time lost, I think you're gonna exit the pits at around P11, P12. It's maybe a little bit of a gamble, but the reality is you're gonna have to... for a moment there I thought my game was crashing. You have to weigh up the pros and cons here. This is where I normally grab my favorite tool, Second Monitor. It has a little indicator that I often use. I can plug in some configuration values for how long a pit stop takes, and it will then show me a little indicator of where I might exit the pits depending on the on what happens. And I found that really useful to make decisions like this, because it gives you that option to consider what's going on. Am I running the best race that I could be running?
Absolutely, and I would believe, at least if they are both to take the same amount of fuel, then that will be the deciding factor between their battle right now, is where they land up on track. provided they individually pulled the trigger at different laps. Otherwise, if they do pit together, we could see them fighting through the pit lane even.
Yes, Courtney mentioning there's a bit of stream lag. For some reason, my encoder is overloaded. And I have tried to improve it, but it wasn't enough. I suspect it's this rain that's messing with things. Let me just switch to an onboard. There's a little bit more static view. That should help with the encoder a little bit. Ooh, was that a move? No, that wasn't. That was back marker traffic. Okay. Right, Mark Henneberry exits the pits, so he's one of the first in the top 10.
Just behind Jeremy de Villiers, so that gives us an indication on about how far back they'll drop.
I could have sworn I just saw Charles Wilkin off track. No, that was not him. Okay, Charles is still running nicely. He hasn't pitted yet. We are at around 5 minutes left in the pit window, so Charles will be running that until the very last minute, if I remember his race strategy correctly.
I see Ryan Barrington-Smith has dived into the pits there, so he's called time, decided it's now that he needs to pit. By the look of it, he will find himself just behind some traffic with a little bit of clean air between the next car, should he manage to get past them easy enough.
That's car number 5. I think that's a back marker. Yes, that's Sheldon Standard. If Ryan plays his cards right and Sheldon doesn't put up too much of a fight, it should be a decent pace difference, and Ryan can utilize the moment to get past him as quickly as possible. Ooh, Sheldon runs very, very wide, but that's going to open up the track now, and Ryan can focus on putting down good fast lap time, and Sean Stradom is in the pits. Just switching to him now. I'm curious to see how long he's going to be stationary.
Wilkin has stayed out, so he's got a maximum of 2 more laps to work with here, perhaps on lighter fuel in comparison.
Okay, that was quick. That was a very, very quick splash and dash by Sean Stradom. Charles got a really, really clean pit stop to beat now. But Sean does come out right behind traffic as well, and I don't think this is necessarily... this might be back marker traffic if I'm looking correctly. Martin Groenewald has completed 28 laps and Sean Stradom has completed 29 laps. Yes, so Groenewald is a little bit of a back marker for Stradom right now. Well, this switching between Afrikaans pronunciation and English pronunciation is catching me out a little bit.
Actually, I'm not the only one. So Johan did complete his pit stop in the immediate next lap and has found himself again half a second behind Ryan Barrington-Smith. So that's paid off for Ryan.
Yes.
Only for now. We'll see what can happen. Oh, as I say that, perhaps another commentator's curse on Johan. Apologies. He did get very sideways and lose some time, but he's kept it pointed the right way.
Switching to Hannes van Wyk. He's got Mark Henneberry 1.4 seconds behind him. Mark's last lap 5 seconds quicker than Hannes', so Hannes, I'm assuming, having pitted the last lap. Charles Wilkin is in the pits. Right, let's see how long he's stationary. He's already out.
And Sean is already halfway through turn 1. So he definitely maintained his pace very well, both his in and out laps there.
Just quickly going to stick with with Charles until we get to that first sector line so that the timing tower can update with a gap. Sean looking really, really good. There's 11.5 minutes left in this race. Charles Wilkin, 9 seconds behind Sean. So Charles not having a good pit stop at all. Either he took too much fuel or he missed the pit box there.
Bench as well, that something might have happened to him because his last lap time was 1:39, being his first flyer after pitting. Looks like a 4 or 5 second time loss.
No, so that was Charles has just exited the pits.
Okay, my delta deceiving me then.
Yes, now. So he's just exited the pits. His last lap at 1:39, meaning that was the little bit of time lost as he drove across the finish line in the pits. And then his current lap time will probably be around 58, maybe closer to 2 minutes. So looks like around about 40 second, maybe a 35-second loss with the pit stop there.
Sean definitely was close to matching his personal best, within a tenth of that on the last flyer, and looking like he's maintaining a very similar pace on this next lap as well. He's earned the right to be out there in front at the moment, I'd say.
Right, just heading back to P12, Martin Groenewald and Rocks. No. This is the frustrating bit of last minute, the latter half of the race. Okay, there's a battle that might be interesting to watch. Hannes van Wyk he's been overtaken by Mark Henneberry.
I think I've also just seen Renier Leach lose 2 places in the space of 3 corners. The second time I did notice he went off track deep into the sand. I'm not sure what happened the first, but he's gone from P11 down to P13 within a handful of corners.
And quickly, he had the rear slide out at the chicane. Did manage to nicely keep a hold of it and then not run into the barrier.
Well, as I called earlier on, that battle for the last podium spot is certainly going to go all the way to the checkered flag at this point. Which is lovely to see from those 2 drivers as well. They only put it a lap apart, and that gap is bobbing between a second to a second and a half at the moment. But Johan van der Merwe looks quite strong in some of the corners over Ryan. We'll see what he can manage in the last 7.5 minutes now.
I think this is the moment we have to keep a cool head, not look in your mirror too much, just focus on getting to the end. This track is still damp. I'm not sure how long that weather widget has shown clouds. Hopping back to P9, Dennis Knutse. Looks like he's got Hardus Boyser running very wide there through the hairpin. Back marker traffic just making it slightly difficult to get by quickly enough. But don't discard Hardus just yet.
I'm just thinking that driving this long in the rain as well will take a toll of its own.
Oh, definitely.
While the degradation on your tires is one thing, I would think that degradation on your concentration is what's going to make the biggest difference coming into the last 5 to 10 minutes. Like you say, it's just about trying to keep your eyes forward, keep in sight of the line rather than worry about whoever's behind you. Just maintaining consistency at this point in the race is what will make such a great difference compared to, I'd say this is where consistency matters even more perhaps than at the start of the race.
Just trying to find some of the last battles in the lower half of the field. Anything interesting there? Flip on sale currently 0.8 of a second ahead of James Leach. Hopping back to Ryan. Seems like the gap, he's opened up that gap to Johan van der Merwe by about 3 seconds now.
This Van Wyk seems to be the one driver on a late charge chasing down Mark Henneberry to try and claim himself a top 5 finish at the expense of Mark. I've also noticed Roxanne Bartel was gently catching Martin van der Walt, but he seems to have cracked on the pace, earning about 3/10 or 4/10 in the last half a lap. But those two right now are the ones that have something to chase for, let's say. Barring any further errors made by any of the drivers, unfortunately.
I think definitely there's a bit of fatigue setting in for everybody now. The rainy conditions, a difficult car to drive. This can be quite the workout.
Indeed. Personally, when I get to this stage of the race, I've given up on trying to push myself, and I go into a bit of a prayer mode, just to hope that the driver hasn't got that little bit extra juice ahead of me, because I know I've finished everything I have by this point.
It's interesting in the endurance racing side. There was a little bit of a chic racing car that went off track completely at 1.8. Arvia. Ooh, what happened with Arvia? Down in P18. But what I was saying with the endurance racing, you end up fuel saving a bit at the start of your stint, trying to just eke out that extra 1 or 2 laps so that over the course of the race you can gain a pit stop. You reach a point where you're like, cool, I have reached my quota, now I'm just pushing, and it's so tough at that last moment when you know that you can push. Car is nice and light, and you have to be very, very careful to not overdo it then.
Including being about 3 to 4 hours down on your sleep delta. So that also makes a big difference on exactly what you can do to maximize that. Just going back to Arvia's era, I think that's promoted Greg Hofart now into P7. So I think that's where he would have lost his initial position. Arvia is from P7. Greg, though, just to make a mention, has actually done really well to slowly work his way up. I can't remember exactly where he started, but I know it was closer to P14, P15, perhaps even lower than that. And he's earned himself half of the track field that he was gridded to, and done very well to find himself in P7 at the moment with a lot of time to spare both sides of him. So he should come home comfortably in a well-earned P7.
Mm-hmm. Lots happening up and down the field there. I think tonight was a really, really tough race. let's just hope that the stewarding team doesn't have to be too busy. But I think I'm actually quite surprised to see people still driving really well. Okay, so they had an issue in the pits. His car didn't respond. Oh, that's unfortunate. Okay, but what I was saying, I think about a year or two ago, there was a lot of resistance to doing wet races. People were scared that driving standards are going to fall and people are not going to get used to it. But I remember one of my first endurance races was in Paul Ricard in the rain in the dark. Phew. That was quite the experience. It was tiring and it was tough. But it kind of taught me that, oh, it's not as scary as it initially sounded. And then the more and more we had these wet races or changing conditions, the more and more people started embracing it, getting used to it. And even though it throws a little bit of a spanner in your plans, just seeing people get around the circuit relatively consistently in these cars, I tip my hat to everybody on the racetrack tonight.
Absolutely. As much as it's always going to be a concern, as with anything in racing, the more time you give it, the better you will get at it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where it starts, but every driver will only improve from there. As we've seen tonight, this wet weather often can lead to a lot more battling and a lot more action on the track for us to spectate. So I think it's something that spectators at least will always vote for, and that's what we want to see. That's why we come out tonight, is to see as much of the racing action as possible.
And Sean Stradom crosses the finish line for a well-deserved win. He drove a spectacular race to the end. Charles Wilkin crossing the finish line for a well-deserved second finish. Good, solid recovery from him after that little bit of a off-track excursion. Ryan Barrington-Smith with Johan van der Merwe right under his wing. Oh, that must have been close for comfort. That gap closed down to 0.6 of a second. Mark Henneberry all trying to get to the end of this race. The ICP 9 to 14 has already finished the race as well. Lots of back markers this time around, and I know I was complimenting them, but I can also understand this is the rain. You have to be aware of what's going on with you. But Mark Henneberry closes out P5. Hannes van Wyck's going to bring home a well-deserved P6. I think he qualified P6 as well, so it's a net zero. Good solid race for him. Gregory Hofart bringing it home in P7. And the last of the top 10 to come and round it out, Byron Thompson. He's going to enter the last hairpin now. Oh, what a race. Okay, let's throw up our camera. I'm gonna get out of the game just to get the noise down in my ears, and let's go see. I'm hoping for some interviews, because I want to hear what the